Hello everyone, hope you're all well and keeping safe. Welcome to another video on the Try to Be Iron channel. So if you watched my last video, you will know that I touched on the subject of coaching and being self-coach, and also whether I'd ever considered being coached myself. So I thought, why not tackle that in today's video? In this video, I'm going to aim to answer three questions. The first question is really about why do I self-coach? The second question is more around how hard is self-coaching to do? And then the third aspect, I suppose, is have I ever considered being coached by somebody else? So first of all, I really like reading around coaching and, learning about our bodies, the way we train. You could say I've got a fair few manuals up on my shelf, and it's not just triathlon manuals. There's biking manuals, there's marathon running manuals, power meter manuals. There's all sorts of, guides there that I use. So I think it's fairly obvious to say that I quite enjoy that aspect of learning and reading and researching. Now those manuals are there for reference purposes, and I tend to use them on and off at different points. I'm currently using the running one, just checking up on things within that. So it's really, they're really reference guides that I will always use. Now the other thing that I also enjoy is putting that learning and that reading and that research all into some sort of practice, and that practice has mostly been on me. Now when I started triathlon 6 to 7 years ago, I think it was, I was probably like many athletes out there. I didn't really know much about it. And the way in which I got myself prepared was just doing a lot of swimming, a lot of biking, a lot of running, and getting me up to a point in which I was ready and in a position to be able to take on my race and complete it. There then comes a point when that kind of wears off, and I suppose you reach a plateau in your performance. It was at that point that my learning process started, and I started to consider how I train a little bit more effectively and systematically to really improve my performance. I think you could then say the next logical step for me was then I considered using plans that were already out there. There's loads on Training Peaks that you can buy from different coaches, but the ones that I went to were the Don Fink plans were quite good, and that was because I was starting to step up my distance and looking to go to the middle distance range, and I wanted something pretty comprehensive, and I'd read some really good reviews around them. Now I think it's fair to say that each year I have improved, and what I mean by that is my race times have certainly come down. My performance in all of the sports has improved. Now, is that down to me training a little bit more effectively and smarter? I think so. But I've also come to learn how my body behaves, and certainly, what load I can take, and really be in touch with it. Now, I'm not getting any younger, and therefore there has to be a point in which my improvement will not come anymore, or it will stunt, or it will slow down, or it will stop. One of those. The other thing to consider is I've never actually hit my ceiling, and I don't know what my ceiling is, so you've got to take those things into consideration as well. And I think really to answer that question of why do I self-coach, it's because I keep on seeing improvements in my performance and my race times, so therefore there is no need for me to change anything if that is happening. Yes, there is questions, I suppose, around the rate of improvement, whether that could have been adapted or changed or bettered if I was coached by someone else, who knows. If I achieve my long-term goal of qualifying for the GB age group team, who knows whether I'll be able to do that. Whether I'm capable of doing it, I don't know. Maybe if I can get myself to a point where I can do that, then I know that I've been successful. But overall, I'm happy. I'm happy with the rate of improvement and performance. I've also helped a few others along the way, and I enjoy the process. Now, this is a great question, and I suppose it ultimately comes down to knowledge and testing, right? And what I mean by that is, to coach someone, you have to have knowledge of the practices of what to do, and I suppose when to do them. But I think you also need to have knowledge of the athlete and understand where they're currently at. So like I said, I've learned a lot about myself over the last few years, and what with all the studying that I've done around training, this has really allowed me, I think, to coach myself fairly effectively. Now, I think the question is, could a qualified coach got more out of me in terms of my performance, my race times and that? And I think the answer is possibly yes. I think one thing you have to realise, that when you coach yourself, you're only accountable to yourself. You haven't got somebody else looking at your data, analysing you, whether you did your sessions, checking up on how things are going. And that is a whole added element to being self-coached. In my opinion, you have to be a really self-motivated person to be able to coach yourself. Because, you know, it's only you that you're accountable to. Now, when you coach yourself, it takes planning. You know, the beauty of being coached, I suppose, is that you have someone else to do all of that side of things. You know, they take away the planning of what, when, the periodization, and it's going to save you a lot of time. So you're not paying just for their knowledge, but you're also paying for the time it takes to put all of those things together and review and analyze what you do. Now, if you're a person who likes looking at data, number crunching, understanding FTP, pace zones, heart rate zones, all that jazz, then that's a massive part of coaching, and that's certainly going to help. In my opinion, quite crucial. So, you know, if you don't have that knowledge, then it almost kind of falls down. So a coach will be able to do all of that for you. You know, it's one of the reasons why I use programs like Trainer Road to help me with my bike workouts and the training for those things, because I just personally don't have the time to sit down, go into my Training Peaks and build all my individual workouts and bike workouts, which I know how to do, but effectively it comes down to time management, and I just don't have the time to do it. So therefore I use programs like Trainer Road to actually help me in planning my training along. And then we come to this last question of, have I ever considered being coached, or will I ever consider it in the future? And the simple answer to that is yes, certainly. Well, like I said earlier, for me it's about the improvement rate. And for me, I feel that my improvement rate and success year upon year is sufficient, and I'm happy with that, and I'm happy therefore with the coaching methods and the things that I'm learning and adapting year on year. I wouldn't say that every year my plan is the same. Therefore, I think my own coaching methods and the things that I'm using seem to be working. You know, I've always said that when the point comes when I don't improve, it's either one, I've hit my ceiling and I can't improve anymore, or I possibly need to rethink the methods of my training. So that for me is really going to be the point when I consider whether I take that step into being coached. And this is where I think setting yourself season goals and realistic season goals come into play, because ultimately they are going to be a benchmark of where you're trying to get to. So all that training, all that planning that you put in place for yourself, and how close you get to that particular goal can be reviewed, and you can actually see whether it's actually worked or whether you need to rethink things. The other thing to consider is that coaching isn't cheap. So, you know, finding someone that you can actually connect with, that will understand you and what you're trying to achieve, I think is really, really important. And, you know, when you're considering a coach, you do have to go through that process. You will often hear lots of athletes, age group athletes, professional athletes who work with someone for a certain amount of time and then move away from them for those particular reasons. So there you have it, everyone. Those are my views on coaching. I think I'm going to leave today's videos there. But what I would say is I'd be really interested to hear your views, whether you're coach, self-coach, or anything that I've touched on. Drop them in the comments box below. I will get round to responding to you and reading them at some point. I will see you again at the weekend with another video. If you're new here, hit the subscriber button, because every little bit helps, and I do really appreciate that. And I will see you again very soon.